Okay. Today we're talking about Terumah and Ma'aser. We're not going to use the slides for a while. Okay. So the first thing is to talk about is which foods are chayvin, are tevel, are chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser. So the very first Mishnah, the very first Mishnah in Ma'aser says you only have to separate Terumah and Ma'aser from oichel, okay, which means food, and it specifically means food that humans eat, okay, not animal food. And it also, probably on the Midrabanan, it includes also juices and oils that come from that food also. Okay, it doesn't mean eat, literally, only chew. It means also juices and things like that also. So, oichel, not so important to us. It excludes hefker. So it has to be, another thing that the Mishnah says it excludes hefker also, and also has to be gedulim in haaretz. So like, for example, we'll see in a minute, mushrooms are not chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser because they're not gedulim in haaretz. There's a question, not for today, there's a question about whether stuff that grows in a greenhouse is considered gedulim in haaretz. Okay, that's not for today. Really today, I'm going to talk to you about whether something is, what makes something be an oichel. Okay, so it's not an oichel if you use it for dyeing, or for fragrances, or for medicinal purposes, or to plant it for next year, or for animal food, or things that are not edible, or parts that you never eat, like the seeds of an orange. Okay, all those things are not oichel.
What about sicha?
That's not oichel. So you're not; those are not chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser. Okay.
The seeds are made for eating.
What did you say?
The seeds are made for eating.
I said orange seeds. Okay. No, who eats orange seeds?
No.
Your seeds. We'll get to your seeds. We're going to come to your seeds. Don't worry about them. I know your seeds. Okay. Now there's another Mishnah, not in Ma'aser. Okay, another Mishnah that says is a rule that says is anything that's considered oichel for Terumah and Ma'aser is also considered an oichel for le'inyan kabbalas tumah. Okay, oichel has rules of what's makabel tumah. So whatever's oichel for Terumah and Ma'aser is for sure oichel for kabbalas tumah. The other way around does not work. Like fish and meat are considered oichel to be makabel tumah, but they're not oichel for Terumah and Ma'aser. They're not gedulim in haaretz. But anything that's an oichel for Terumah and Ma'aser is considered oichel for tumah. Okay, so Taisa is a kasha. Taisa is a kasha. In a few places, there's a kasha. One Gemara says, you're mechuyev to separate Terumah and Ma'aser from tavlin, from spices. Okay, so that means is they must be considered oichel for tumah. Okay, because the Mishnah says anything that's oichel for Terumah for chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser is considered an oichel. But a different Gemara says that oichel, that spices are not considered an oichel to be makabel tumah. So this is a kasha. Okay, one Gemara says that the chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser. One says they're not makabel tumah as oichel. So it says if they're chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser, they should automatically be makabel tumah also. So Taisa says is important for us is that Taisa says there are two different types of tavlin, two different types of spices. Some things that we call tavlin that are in this group called spices are things that you eat as is. Okay, Taisa is an example of a thing you eat as is that he considered tavlin as onions. Okay, which if you look in Hilchos Brachos, you'll find that there are ways you eat onions as is that you make a bracha adam on them. There's onions. That's his example of a spice that isn't oichel. That's the one Gemara is talking about. And other ones are spices that you don't eat at all. Okay, you just use them to give a spice into another food. No one eats that other food. Okay, like for example, black pepper or bay leaves or tea leaves. Okay, no one eats those things for themselves.
Cloves.
Maybe. So you don't eat the thing for itself. Okay, nobody eats tea leaves. Okay, nobody eats black pepper. It's only there to give a taste into another food. Okay, so those foods they're not tevel, they're not mechuyev Terumah and Ma'aser. Okay, now what happens? But if you have a food that it's a tavlin, it's you don't eat it by itself. You eat it for other foods, but you do eat it with the other food. Like for example, what about horseradish? Okay, so you don't eat horseradish by itself, but you eat horseradish with fish. Okay, but you eat it; it goes together with the other food. Or what about nowadays? Is you take basil. And you make something called pesto sauce. Okay, and again, people don't eat pesto sauce as far as I know. Eat it straight. They eat it with pasta. Okay, so is that considered a tavlin or is that not considered a tavlin? Okay, because you eat it, you do eat it, but you don't really eat it for itself. You eat it always with some as part of something else. So Taisus is two tutim Taisus, depending on which one, whether that is or is not considered a tavlin. Okay, these again, the black pepper tavlin, that's for sure not a tavlin. That's for sure tavlin, not chayvin Terumah and Ma'aser. But when you have a horseradish, which you don't eat by itself, but you eat it with other foods, it's there to enhance the taste of the other food, but you eat it together. But there are also two answers in Tosfos. So modern day poskim, because that's when the shilas woke up again, 100 years ago, talk about it, and they say you should be mafresh Terumah and Ma'aser for them, but you should not make a bracha. Okay, because it's a shilah Tosfos, two sorts of Tosfos, whether it is or is not mechuyvin, it's tavlin or not, and therefore for those kind of things you mafresh without a bracha. Okay, so now we now found out that there's all kinds of spices. Some of them are chayiv completely, some of them are potter completely, and some of them are in the middle. And depends on how you eat them, whether they're chayiv or not in Terumah and Ma'aser.
On Pesach or Shvash, if you're just eating it in and of itself, does that affect this discussion? That's
an interesting question, because you think there's one time a year that people actually eat the stuff straight. I have no idea. Okay, it's actually interesting because you don't make adama if you eat it straight. So that tells you that it's not a real food. I don't. The fact that once in a while we have to eat it, I don't know. Okay, so this idea that there's different levels of spices or foods that could be chayiv, potter, or in between is something that very much depends on mitzias, on what's going on today or tomorrow, like what people do. Okay, so for example, if you only use dill to flavor your soup or to make pickles, okay, that would be tavlin, would be potter from Terumah and Ma'aser. Okay, but what happens if people start using dill to make dill dips? Okay, they start making much more dill in it, and that's more like the horseradish cases. Okay, so it very much depends on what people do. Okay, dill, I happen to use it.
But dill, if you make a dip, it's not you're eating so much the dill, you're flavoring the dip.
No, it's got a lot of dill in it. Okay, it's very dilly. Okay, it's like horseradish. Horseradish you don't eat straight either. When you put on your fish, it has beets in it also, but you still call it horseradish, right?
Beets is flavoring the horseradish.
Okay, so I guess you don't eat dill dip. I don't eat it either, but I watch other people do it. Okay, now but it happens that dill was just a good, interesting example I mentioned because it happens to be because the Gemara says that you're mechuyev to be mafresh Terumah and Ma'aser from sheves. Okay, sheves is dill. Okay, that's how the Rambam translates it, that it means dill. And it's because the Gemara says you mechuyev to be mafresh Terumah and Ma'aser from it because you use it in kutach, okay, which is dill dip. Okay, that's what kutach almost is, dill dip, but we make nowadays, except it was milchigs. But so my point is I'm just saying that, so I'm giving you that as an example because it goes up and down. 100 years ago, people only used dill to make pickles. Okay, so then it wouldn't be chayiv. Maybe today it is, and maybe in times of the Gemara it was. Just as an example, you have
what the Rambam's talking about is just like you make a broccoli kugel where it's substantial stuff. The kuktach, maybe over there, the kuktach wasn't just a little dill; it was like a whole.
I'm asking you. I agree with you. You're right. I'm saying so. It depends on all these things. Depend on people. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you yes or no, but just for each food, you have to think about how do people use this food, and is it which of these three categories is fit into. Now, one case that came up to us, it's not David's case, not David's case. No, we'll get to your case. Don't worry. I think we're going to get to your case. Is there was discussions going on. It did not pan out in the end. But what discussion is whether someone was growing vanilla in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, now this is a very modern shaila because vanilla does not grow in Eretz Yisrael. It's the wrong climate. Okay, so no one talked about that. My knowledge spoke about the shaila because it's like doesn't exist. It just doesn't grow in Eretz Yisrael. But there's a person growing them in greenhouses. There was a whole chachma which we had some involvement in. It ended up not panning out. But when we were dealing with it, we thought that it should be considered tavlin. Because nobody eats vanilla. Okay, vanilla it's all it is. It's just something to give. It's like black pepper. You use it to flavor other foods, and therefore it should be not mechuyev. At the time, again, when we were potentially involved, we spoke to people in Eretz Yisrael, poskim in Eretz Yisrael, who were inclined to think that we were correct. Again, it didn't end up lamaisa, but there was a discussion about that. Okay, now, there's another thing which is also negeh, or at least was a time there was negeh, which is citrus oils. Okay, citrus oils are these really flavorful oils, like it's called orange oil or grapefruit oil or lemon oil. It comes from citrus. Excuse me, it's made from the peel of the fruit. Okay, the peel is, Chazon Ish says it speaks out. Peels are not tevel because basically nobody eats peels. Okay,
candy.
I didn't say nobody. I said basically nobody eats peels. Okay, for every 1,000 pounds of peels, a quarter of an ounce gets eaten as some candy oranges. So basically, no one eats it. So he says it's tevel. And the question is, what about citrus oils? Okay, so that now they squeeze, essentially, the peel to get out this oil out of it. It has a really strong taste to it. It has a strong orange taste or lemon taste or grapefruit taste to it. And it's used as a flavor. Okay, or they make chemicals out of it. They make limonene out of it, or they make, what's the other one? Nutketone, I don't know, all kinds. They make chemical, they extract chemicals out of these oils that they took out of them, and they have these strong tastes, and they use as flavors. They use to give flavor to something. Okay, if you have naturally flavored, this is strawberry. Okay, if you had naturally flavored, orange flavor, the natural could come from orange oil. Okay, so we thought that it shouldn't be chayv in Terumah and Ma'aser. Okay, it's again a tavlin. We asked some people. So again, this is I asked some people. So far, I haven't gotten to the bottom of this yet. Some people are still told me, "Yeah, sounds right," and some people said, "Is yeah, but we require it to be marfresh Terumah and Ma'aser anyhow." They couldn't explain to me why. So I'm waiting to hear more details. Maybe I'll hear more about the person who told me. One and a half people who told me the marfresh Terumah and Ma'aser was like they hold you have to. I was like, why? But they couldn't explain. So we're waiting to find out about that. Okay. So before we move on, I just want to tell you we've been talking about Terumah and Ma'aser. A lot of these same criteria for oichel applies to Arla and Shemitah also, but the rules are not exactly the same. Okay, like for example, Arla has a rule. It's in this week's Currents, if you read the new CRC publication. And this week is that Arla, the rule is if a fruit is chayv in Arla, has a din of Arla, then the peel automatically is chayv in it also. So orange peels would be in the din of Arla. Okay, so that's a special rule for Arla. That's an example. So the rules are not exactly the same. And for Shemitah, the rules are also different. It has to be oichel, but let's say animal food is also has a din of Shemitah to it. Like svichen and things like that. Well, not svichen, but Kedushah shvius. And animal food and spices are also chayiv in Shemitah. So the rules are not exactly the same. Okay, before we finish up talking about which foods are chayiv and not chayiv, I just have to mention something. It comes up every once in a while, and that is when we say a food does not need hashgacha. For the hashgacha people, we call that a group one. We tell a company you could use. Someone asked this morning, can I use parsley? And the answer is you could use parsley. In the right dried parsley from any sources, okay, it's kosher from anybody, so it's group one. You can get it from any source. You don't have to have hashgacha on it, but it automatically means to exclude Eretz Yisrael, okay, because things that come from Eretz Yisrael have mitzvahs tluis ba'aretz, okay, like Terumah and Ma'aser them. So it's not automatic that it's okay. You have to deal with it. You have to know if it's okay, or deal with the Terumah and Ma'aser yourself afterwards. So parsley maybe is not. Maybe that's considered tavlin. But I'm saying all the rules of, unless it came from Shemitah, you'd have to know about those things. So when we say something is group one, it's order built in. Sometimes we say it specifically. Here's what I'm going to mention, David. Sometimes we mention it specifically, like Eretz Yisrael is a big exporter of watermelon seeds. Okay, it seems that they're a big part of the market to sell watermelon seeds for whatever reason. So for watermelon seeds, we would either not call it group one, or we would say group one, but not from Eretz Yisrael. We would write that specifically to make it clear to the person.
They're planted for the seeds.
They're planted for the seeds, yeah.
There's watermelons, there's some watermelons.
Right, the opposite.
And you make sure they have a
lot of seeds. Right. So sometimes, like with the watermelon seeds, we specifically might write on our schedule. What we call it, we'd write is not from Israel. We specifically write that. But even if we didn't write it, we mean it's automatic. We say a potato is okay. It doesn't need hashgacha, a raw potato. But if it came from Eretz Yisrael, it would be different. Okay. Now let's move on to the next set, and that is how to do the Hafrashah. So you can't. If you do Hafrashah for yourself, fine. You'll do Hafrashah. I'll tell you in a minute. We'll get to it in a minute how you do the Hafrashah. But when you do Hafrashah for somebody else, like we do when we're giving hashgacha for somebody, so we're giving Hafrashah for somebody else. So we have to deal with the following, and that is you can't be marfresh Terumah and Ma'aser unless you're the owner or you're his shliach. Okay, so the problem is, so a guy can't be memana someone as a shliach. So if the person who owns the company is non-Jewish, then he can't make me a shliach to be marfresh Terumah and Ma'aser for him. Now, we talked about way different time in Hafrashah Challah. Even if he's a yid, we may have problems of him making me a shliach because he's not if the owner is not there to make me a shliach each time, then what's going to happen? Today he made me a shliach. Okay, yes, you can be marfresh Terumah and Ma'aser for me. Okay, that's fine for today. What about for the stuff that comes in tomorrow or in 5 years from now that didn't even grow now? So we questions of davar shel ba'olam and all kinds of things that's not for today. We talked about that by Hafrashah Challah. But the simple case that we have to deal with is what happens if the owner is not Jewish? Okay, so his company buys watermelon seeds. Okay, that was David's case. He buys watermelon seeds from Eretz Yisrael. He's not Jewish, so he could do. I guess he could do Hafrashah himself, but he can't make me a shliach to be marfresh. Okay, you can't do Hafrashah. Oh, actually, there's din about that. I spoke. I actually. I don't remember anymore. Now that I didn't mean to say it, but now that I said it, there's actually talk about that. I don't remember. Okay. Anyhow, just wrong about it. I don't remember. Anyhow, so the.
Well, there is if he does.
If he does it, then it's chal. It has a Kedushah. I don't remember about it. Anyhow, so he can't make me. He can't make me a shliach. Okay. So the only way to be marfish Terumah and Ma'aser is for the person who's doing it, the mashgiach, to take possession of the produce, and now it's his produce. Now he can be marfish Terumah and Ma'aser. Okay. Now sometimes for the simplest is just to take ownership of all of the produce, but the truth is what he really has to do is own at least the. What he's going to do Hafrashah on. So, in effect, he has to own about 20% of it. You'll see in my pretty pictures coming soon. He has to own like 20% of the stuff in order to do that, and he's going to need to make kinyanim. Okay, without getting into all the gory details. When you want to make a kinyan tavlin between a Jewish person and not Jewish person, it's a machlokes which way you do, machlokes in the Gemara which way you do it, machlokes paiskim what you do. So if you did mois and meshicha, that would work for sure. Okay, so you transfer money and you do mashiach on it or agba, but that's not realistic when you're dealing with 30,000 pounds of watermelon seeds. Okay, it's not realistic to do mashiach for that. So then you have to do all kinds of other mixtures of different kinyanim. So we do like they do by mechiras chametz, the same kind of thing by mechiras chametz. They're trying to sell chametz that you can't do mashiach on. It's in a million people's houses. Okay, you can't do mashiach on that. So they do. The money counts also as situmta and din d'machusa, and then you do money to do also kinyan agav and kinyan chotzer because you sell them the land where it's on. All kinds of things that are done.
With the forklift.
Yeah, you could potentially, but not if there's 30,000 pounds of it. Yeah, so that was going to work. Okay, so in that case, so sometimes you could do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but sometimes okay. So now you finally get to see some pretty pictures. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you briefly about how what you're doing when you do Hafrashah. Okay, so in this pretty picture we have 100 apples. Okay, we got 100 tavl apples over here. Okay, I don't even know if apples grow it so, but for the picture they look pretty. Okay, so we have 100 apples. Okay, and truma. The first thing we have to do is the mafresh truma. It has Kedushah too. We give any tiny bit. Okay, that's a little purple thing on top there, on top left. Okay, and then we have to Ma'aser Rishon is 10%. Okay, so 10% of what we have that we have to give as Ma'aser Rishon. Then we have to give trumas Ma'aser. So a tenth of the Ma'aser is given to a kind that also has Kedushah. Okay, so one of those 10 apples that we made for Ma'aser has to be given for trumas Ma'aser, and then.
You're wasting an apple there.
Why am I wasting an apple?
But take that other one where they took a mashu and use it the rest of the apple for the Terumah and Ma'aser.
Use it because it's too small.
You just take a mashu.
Oh, okay, this is just a graphic. If you wanted in the nusach, you say it is.
Yeah, you take a little bit more.
No, you say a little more than 100. So
right.
Okay, that's true. Okay. Anyhow, now there's a secondary Ma'aser. Okay, there's a secondary Ma'aser. Okay, secondary Ma'aser, and that Ma'aser depends on the year. Okay, so the secondary Ma'aser depends on what year it is. If it depends on which year of Shemitah, it is. Okay, in the first and the second and the fourth and the fifth year of Shemitah, the Ma'aser you give is Ma'aser Sheni. Okay, which has Kedushah. So like in last year and the year before was years of Ma'aser Sheni. And so those have Kedushah. You have to eat them in Yerushalayim. They have Kedushah. And then the third year and the sixth year, that's like this year's the third year. Tavshin Pei Hey is the third year. You give Ma'aser Ani in the third year and the sixth year. That has to be given to poor people that does not have Kedushah to it. And then the seventh year of the cycle is Shemitah. That's in however many years from now. You can count that.
Why are we leaving off on the third column, the top apple?
Because you only have to give 10% of what's left. So since you had already given 10 for Ma'aser, you only have about 90 apples left, so you only have to give 9. Okay, I should have said that. You only have to give 10% of what's left, so you only have to give 9. You only have to give 9 apples. You only have 9 apples left. Okay. Okay. So that's what you do now. You
have to assume. What's the year?
So most people either don't know what year it is because they didn't just see the little sign here that said the over in the third year of Shemitah. Unless they open up the Luach, most people don't know what year Shemitah in. But also figuring out what year the produce is considered doesn't depend on what year you're standing in. It's not that if I'm in Tavshin Pei Hey, it depends is this fruit of Tavshin Pei Hey. So that's not always easy to figure out. So in the Nusach, it usually says if it's a year of Ma'aser Sheni, I want it to be Ma'aser Sheni. If it's a year of Ma'aser Ani, I want it to be Ma'aser Ani. It was like, I can't figure this out. I have no idea. Are these seeds, were they picked before Rosh Hashanah, after Rosh Hashanah, and for fruits it has a different set of rules. So you just say, whatever it is, that's what I want it to be for. Okay. Okay, now, before I move on to dealing with the Kedushah of it, there's a little to do, I'll mention it, which is, in Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Ramosha say, that it's pasha to them, that if you grew produce in Eretz Yisrael, and you shipped it to Chutz Aretz, it's chayv Trumas and Ma'aser, and you make a bracha on it. Okay, there's actually a bracha for when you do real Hafrashah Trumas and Ma'aser, they say you make a bracha on it. Well, what's going on over here? Before I tell you the other side of the story, what's going on over here? The chiv of Trumas and Ma'aser starts when you harvest the produce, and it gets a stage called Gemar Malacha. Okay, it's finished. Gemar Malacha means the farmer has harvested it and done everything he needs to do to get it ready for storage or sale. Okay, not everything. It's not a cookie that you could eat, but from the farmer's perspective, he's finished everything that he has to do. Okay, it's ready to either put away for storage or ready to sell. Okay, now for grains, that stage is called miruach. Okay, not important what that means. So a lot of times the place when they talk about Gemar Malacha, they use the term miruach. Miruach is really the way you get to Gemar Malacha for grain. Okay, so sometimes they borrow that term. They use the word miruach when apples don't have miruach. Okay, only grains have miruach, but they use the word miruach to mean Gemar Malacha. So Gemar Malacha is when it becomes chayiv. Okay, before that you could eat it. It's not chayiv in Trumas and Ma'aser. So the Rambam says that if you produce that you have in Eretz Yisrael that you sent to Chutz Aretz, is not chayiv in Trumas and Ma'aser. That's what the Rambam says. Okay, some people understand him to mean is the Rambam means it even if the Gemar Malacha happened in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, it happened in Eretz Yisrael. It was chayiv in Trumas and Ma'aser, and you shipped it to Chutz Aretz. It becomes potter. Okay, that's what some people understand. Most people say the Ram didn't mean that. The Ram didn't mean that. He only meant as if the Gemar Malacha itself was in Chutz Aretz, or even the Ram or the Ram meant it, but it's not correct. Okay, he meant that, but it isn't correct. Okay, so Ramosha says, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky said, it's Pasha. What?
No, it's quoting the mission.
He's quoting the mission, but the question is, what is it talking about? What is it? Kate, is it? Okay. Okay. So, but everyone talks about it on the Kesef Mishnah didn't write a Pirush on Mishnah. He wrote a Pirush on Mishnah Torah, not on the Mishnah Rishonah. Anyhow, so that's it's a do. It's a lot of places can talk about this, and Ramosha and Reb Chaim Kanievsky say it's partial so much that you even make a bracha on it. Dain Weiss says, there are some people who hold not like that, and therefore he says you should be mafresh without a bracha. But again, most people hold that, assuming the Gemar Malacha happened there, which is typical, then you're mechuyev to. Now, the one thing I'm just going to say, just if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's fine. And that is, there's another thing the Rambam says is he says that if you harvest peiros she'einen ru'uyin la'achila, then you don't have to mafresh Trumas and Ma'aser. Okay, so at least one person, took that to mean if you harvest produce before it's fully ripe, then it's not chayv in Trumas and Ma'aser either. Okay, and that's incorrect. I'm just telling you that it's incorrect, because in the very next halacha, the Rambam says, when I say it's not roy lachil, I meant it didn't reach oinus hamaisrus. Okay, oinus hamaisrus is like a third grown. Okay, it's a way lower level. Nobody harvests stuff before oinus hamaisrus. Okay, so when the Rambam says it's not roy lachila, he didn't mean not roy lachila like some people took it to mean like it ripened on the boat. That's not what he meant. I'm just mentioning, if you know what I'm talking about, fine. If not, you're also fine. Okay, so this Kedushah, after I did my Hafrashahs, okay, this Kedushah too, is that going to show on the paper? I'm not sure it's going to show on the screen here. Okay, we have Kedushah too, the Ma'aser Sheni. Okay, if it was the year of Ma'aser Sheni, this Kedushah in my mind it's purple. The secondary Ma'aser. Okay, if it's Ma'aser Ani, there's no Kedushah, but there's Kedushah to Ma'aser Sheni. So there's Kedushah to the Truma. Okay, so the Truma and the Trumas Ma'aser, that's the purple at the very top left, and the silver apple. Okay, those for sure have Kedushah to them, and then the Ma'aser Sheni has. So for the Ma'aser, let's deal with the Ma'aser Sheni first.
What's the second one? Oh, on top. Okay.
Yeah, there's Truma, the Truma and the Trumas Ma'aser. Those for sure have Kedushah to them. Only Kohanim can eat them, and only if they're tahar, and only if the Truma is tahar, we don't eat it. That has Kedushah to it. And then the Ma'aser, if it's a year of Ma'aser Sheni, that's what I think is purple, or red, whatever you want to call that. If it's sorry about that. That's my phone ringing on my computer. I'm sorry about that. Anyhow, so if it's Ma'aser Sheni, then it also has Kedushah to it. Okay, so the Ma'aser Sheni we're going to deal with, it's easier to deal with. Okay, let's deal with that first. Okay, I apologize about that. I can't fix it Okay. Okay. So the okay, good. So for so for Ma'aser Sheni, what we do is we take the Kedushah of these 9 apples, okay, and we transfer the Kedushah onto a coin. Okay, I don't know if you saw that for a second there was a coin on there that had a mem on it. That it didn't say you're supposed to put a mem onto it, so that's from Ma'aser. Okay, you put the Kedushah onto a coin. Okay, the coin the coin has to be worth at least a pruta. Okay, at the price of silver historically has never gone over that a pruta being worth more than 5 cents. Okay, it's worth about 3 cents now, a pruta, but it's never been at the peak. There was this craze a bunch of years ago, but it never got over. A nickel is at least is enough for a pruta. So you could transfer the kedusha of all those apples onto one pruta, and then what? Now the kedusha is on them. There's no kedusha on the apples anymore. The kedusha is on the pruta. So you have to. Poor Yossi. His one that he missed. I know he's watching remotely, but is so you have to do 2 things. Okay, you have to just you deface the coin. That's what Yossi's doing now, and then you have to throw it into the water. This is really from a video we made many years ago about Biur Ma'aser.
The coin is from where? American.
In that case, it was an Israeli coin because it was a pruta chamura. That's why we're using there. But no, you'd have to use your own coin. So you use an American coin. So I asked a lawyer about that. Yes, there is actually a law that says you're not allowed to deface currency, but it's only if you're doing it to be malicious or to try to deceive somebody or something like that. But there's nothing wrong with defacing. I asked the lawyer. We asked the lawyer when we did this video. We asked the lawyer if that was okay, and he said yeah, it was fine.
Does that be Yam HaMelech or any Yam?
No, that was Lake Michigan. Actually, the place can say you're not supposed to put it into places that are disgusting. So we didn't think you should put it into the canal that runs on. But it depends on what time of the year. In certain parts of the year, it's all sewage water. So in the place that you're not supposed to put it into the disgusting place. So that's where you went to the lake. That's the lake. Anyhow, so that's okay. So that's what you're supposed to do. That's for the Ma'aser Sheni. What about the Truma and the Trumas Ma'aser? Okay, those have to give to a kohen. It has kedusha to it. You can't put it onto a coin. So it depends. It depends if it's hochshel kapotoma, which is foods can't become tamei unless they are once got wet once they were harvested. Okay, and different produce may or may not get wet after it gets harvested. Like apples, I have no idea. You'd have to
harvested, or even if it's mechuber kark and it's raw, no.
If it doesn't need rain. Yes, that's correct. But that's
most of the time.
Yeah,
well, maybe not.
Not Eretz Yisrael. Doesn't rain the whole summer, But so it very much depends on the thing. Okay, so in the case of the watermelon seeds, we found out that they were hochshel kabotama. Okay, because they would washing them to get the seed separated from the rest of the thing. Yes, they were hochshel kabotama. But let's say apples. I have no idea if apples get washed. Probably don't get washed. Do they ever get?
If it's hochshel and it never became tummy.
What do you say?
If it was hochshel, it never became tummy. Nobody touched it.
If it's hochshel, we assumed that if it was hochshel, it became tummy also.
Thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Go through machinery.
So did somebody touch it? It's a fair question. I don't know if we thought about that.
Apples, or did they used to spray apples with something?
Spray apples while they're growing, probably.
No, after they're grown.
Oh, spray it with because they put wax onto it.
Something like that.
But that wouldn't be marshal kabotumba. We have to think about what's in the wax. We have to think about that. I didn't think about it like that. But okay. But for each thing, you have to know if it's hoshel kabotumba, and then it depends like this. If it was hoshel kabotumba, I mean, so it's tame. So now it's truma that's tame. Then l'chadchili you're supposed to burn it, which we tried. We tried very hard. I'm sorry. I should have brought you that video. I was trying to burn. Trying to burn the things. Okay. And if if you're unsuccessful, you're not able to. Like we were not able to burn the truma tmeya, the truma that's hoshel kabotumba, then secondary choice is to bury it. Okay, which is what happened. Can't moshava. So they buried it. Okay, that's the second choice. Okay, if it's not hoshel kabotumba, then the first choice is to bury it, and the second choice is if you can't do that, which is again not so realistic for people, then you wrap it up and you put it into the garbage. Okay, that's a secondary choice. Okay, if you're interested, we're running a little late, so I'm not going to read. Oh, why is he coming on again? Okay. So this is my truma. Okay, here we go. I forgot about we have this slide here. Okay, so those are the ones that needed the other kedusha, and the rest we could eat. The procedure. I'm not going to read. You could read this if you really want to. You could read all this. There's a whole nusach. Is it going to keep on going? It's not going to go. Okay. Okay, so what I just told you, all the things that I told you, is in that nusach. Okay, where what the person basically does is they say is I take a little bit more than 1% and I separate it from everything else. That's the part that's going to eventually be the truma and the truma smeiser. I put that on the side, and then I say this whole nusach that says I'm doing all these hafrashas, and the little bit more than 1% is the truma, the 1% is the truma smeiser. The Ma'aser Sheni gets put onto a coin. You do all these things. That's the whole nusach over there. If you want to read it, if not, I can give it to you later. Okay. So let me just finish up with two things, and that is like this. The first is, and that's where the video comes from, is that on the Pesach of the 4th year of the Shemitah cycle, on the 7th year. Ooh, why didn't I write the 7th? Look at that. The 4th year and the 7th year of the Shemitah cycle, there's a mitzvah called Biur Ma'aser, which is a person has to settle all the chiyuvim they have for Ma'aser. They have to give it to Kohanim and Leviim, to an Aniyim. They have to get rid of all the coins that they have. So there's one mitzvah called Biur Ma'aser. You have to do all those things. So let's say if you have a coin like that video that you had is because the Sirsi on the coin of Prut Chamura, not relevant what that is, but we had a coin, so we had to deal with it before Pesach of the 4th year of Shemitah cycle and the 7th year of Shemitah cycle. That's coming next year, is the 4th year. So you have to deal with it. And then there's another mitzvah called Vidui Ma'aser. Okay, which is you say a whole nusach that I did all the mitzvah I'm supposed to do. Okay, we don't do the mitzvah of vidur ma'aser anymore nowadays. Okay, we don't do vidur ma'aser, but biur ma'aser we do, and so by the end of that time you have to take care of all your ma'aser obligations. Okay, and deal with it. If you have any of these coins left, or if you have any truma ma'aser have to be separate, you have to do it by then. So that's coming. Okay, coming in a year from now, Pesach. So a little more than a year from now, and again the 4th year of Shemitah and the 7th year of Shemitah and the 7-year cycles. Okay, that's one thing. And the last thing I want to tell you is that Kashering. And that's like this. If you cook tevel in a pot, okay, or in his case, you roast watermelon seeds in a, whatever you call it, some kind of machine, then the machine absorbs tam of tevel. Okay? So if you figure that out while it's still within 24 hours, then you have an easy solution. Okay, what you do is you take some more of that food. Let's say it was carrots. You take some more of them. You mafresh trumas ma'aser from the carrots you have, and you say, "I have in mind it should include the blias that are in this kli as well." Okay, I also wanted to include the blias that are in there. It absorbed tevel, so I wanted to do hafrashah on the real carrots and on the blias of carrots that are also okay. But that only works if you found that within 24 hours. Okay, but if you found that after 24 hours, it's not going to work, and that's because after 24 hours, the tam is Ein Ben Yarmai. Okay, the tam is not Roy Lachila anymore. And the din is, things that are not Roy Lachila are not Chayvin Trumas or Ma'aser. You can't be mafresh anymore on them. I said way at the beginning, one of the examples of something that's not an Oichelis and that's not Roy Lachila. So if it's not, once it's been in there for 24 hours, you can't be mafresh Trumas or Ma'aser on the stuff that's in there anymore.
You never Kashering Ma'aser. It was Kashering Ma'aser.
No, it was Tevel. No, it's not chayiv anymore. No, everything. No,
it was chayiv, or he was chayiv.
Poskim forgot specifically. If you have a food that rots, okay, you have a food that was royal achila and become not royal achila, it's not chayiv and truma ma'aser anymore. It's not tevel anymore. So it was yesterday. It was a good carrot. Today it's a bad carrot. So it's not chayiv anymore.
Also,
that's what I'm getting to.
Kosher.
So that's a machlokes rishonim whether Ein Ben Yarmai is really not royal achila or if it's just pug and kosher. Okay, So now that doesn't mean, but you can't. If just because you can't be marfash on it, you can't use it because Xer Ein Ben Yarmai at the Ben Yarmai. Xer Ein Ben Yarmai means is even though the tam in there is not royal, even if the tam in there is not royal achila, too bad you still can't use it. Okay, so the simple understanding would be is that therefore you have to kasher it. Okay, you have a bli in there that's treif. You can't fix it anymore. It's like imagine if it was chazer, you can't fix it, so you're stuck and you have to kasher the kli. In fact, in mamash it's like in passing. Chaim Knesset brings. He wasn't even talking about this. It's in passing. Rabbi Yashav assumed that you have to kasher. So why shouldn't you have to kasher? Xer Ein Ben Yarmai, at the Ben Yarmai, you have to kasher. Okay, but Rishon Zalman has a chiddush to say that tevel is different than everything else. Everything else. I don't know if he has another example like it. He says let's say I cook treif in my pot, so I'm not allowed to use that pot. I'm not allowed to cook in that pot. When it becomes Ein Ben Yarmai, mid the rice I could use it. Chacham say don't use it because Xer Ein Ben Yarmai at the Ben Yarmai. But there was a time that I wasn't able to use the pot. He says, but if I had tevel cooked in the pot, I could always cook in this pot. There's nothing wrong with cooking in that pot. I just have to remember. Let's say I cook carrots in there that are tevel. tomorrow when I cook, an hour later I want to cook peas, I'm allowed to cook peas in there. I just have to remember that those peas have tevel in them, and I have to be my Trumas and Maasers. There's nothing wrong with doing it. You just have to keep it in mind that this thing needs to be dealt with as tevel. He says it's even better than milchiks and fleishiks. If I cook some milchiks in a pot, I'm allowed to cook milchiks afterwards. But every time I cook something in it, it has this restriction on it that the thing I just cooked in there, I can't eat with fleishiks anymore. So this isser, there's a sort of isser floating around on there. He says there's no isser on tevel at all. Just isser, you have to remember to do Hafrashah Truma afterwards. That's what he says. And therefore he says is there's no isser to use it ben yamim. If there's no isser to use it ben yamim, there's no isser to use it ain't ben yamim either. So Rosh Zaman says he says a big chiddush to say this. So he says, I'm not sure if you should be samech on this lamaisa. He says, but if you have a kli that can't be kashered, like it's made out of cheres, and you won't be able to kasher it, then he says, then you could be samech on this to not do that. I don't think that most hashkachas rely on that, except like he says, in the case of a tzir, where they're stuck, with this, let's say it needs libun gomer, and they wouldn't be able to do it. In chutzar, we talked about chutzar. Now
saying they have to tziluf.
Okay. I'm not sure how much of a tzir that is. That's not such a maybe, but in more the case by us was it was a shaila of having to do libun on the thing, okay, which was not so realistic. So then there was more what to talk about.
Also, it's a Goyish company.
Oh, okay. There we go. We always throw that in, right? But okay, fine. Beseder.